Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Brothers of the Arcana. I am, as always, your co-host, Alex Aldea.
I am your co-host, Dave Ferrigno, and today we welcome the Michigan UFO Sightings and Paranormal Encounters podcast, Wayne and Michelle.
Hey guys, thanks for having us on.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you guys. This is quite amazing, and very psyched to have you guys on the show. So, Michelle, I understand that you are quite an expert in Roman and Egyptian mythology, and I find that utterly fascinating. Can you tell us a little bit about that as a start?
Yeah, Michelle.
Oh, is that for me? Oh, I get to teach the what do I call it? The watered down version of Egyptian, Norse, and Greek and Roman mythology to 7th and 8th graders. So middle school.
Cool.
Yeah. So I think back to my experience with mythologies. When I was a kid, I remember they had teachers that would sneak in Greek mythology here and there. And I found it interesting. It was an interest of mine, but I never actually took a class on it in college. They didn't offer any mythology courses. I went to 2 different Catholic colleges, though, so maybe that's why. Started digging in more, doing my own reading. And when I was asked a few years ago if I would like to teach this course, I said, absolutely. I said, but I want to teach it my way, and I want to pick the mythologies that I cover. And the first one was Egyptian. So, and then Norse, because of course the kids associate it with a lot of the video games that they play, and of course Marvel. And then the Greek and Roman, honestly, they only get a very brief taste of the Greek and Roman. It's the stories of the cultures, the religious ties. I wish I could dive in deeper with them, but I do not want parents with pitchforks and torches at my classroom door.
Yeah, that probably.
Why would that even happen? The pitches, and I mean, we're talking about, you're not teaching them witchcraft. You're teaching them what exactly? I mean, just basically.
No, the different mythologies, and here's the thing. Even our district, they bought nothing for me as far as material. I had to do my own searches throughout the internet, through books that I had. And so what I find with my district is, like, whenever I do go to search for something for the kids, I get blocked and it says alternative religion. So it was a course that they tried to offer to the 6th graders too, but I absolutely said there are no 6th graders in that class. I said 6th grade mentality is not ready for any discussions as far as the origin of horse, or digging into, all the different gods of Norse mythology, and then the talk of Ragnarok. Because anytime you start talking about the end of days, I do have some very sensitive parents that would not necessarily care for them.
Interesting.
Understand.
Because in Jersey, it's more the other side of things, where if you're not woke enough, you have problems, and over there, I guess if you're progressive at all, you have problems. So I guess it all depends on where you're at and what you're trying to go for. Because it doesn't sound like you're really pushing the envelope too much there. You're just trying.
No, and I really don't. When we talk about Egyptian, it's more introducing them to the different gods and goddesses of Egyptian mythology, getting to know as far as like what their traits, what their purpose was in Egyptian mythology, powers. The kids do research on their own. They do scroll projects. We work with the hieroglyphics, just as more of like an intro baby course, because I do want to at least fascinate them enough that they continue to read on their own. They take mythology in high school, and hopefully whatever college, if they do go to college that they end up at, they have a mythology course that they'll continue to do their own readings.
Gotcha. Well, that's great. I love the fact that, so my grandmother read to me of all kinds of mythology and such when I was little, and that's really what got me started on the whole bandwagon of getting more involved in mythology and that kind of thing. So I still have the books actually that she read to me in Romanian when we were in the park and stuff like that when I was little, and that captured my imagination in a huge way. Dave was kind of similar. I don't know who read to him as a child, but yeah, there was a kind of
Bigfoot.
kind of interesting.
Mostly Bigfoot. Yeah.
Yeah, Bigfoot actually read to you as a child. That's great. That's just not many people can boast of that.
Yeah, exactly.
That's great. Dave, you want to?
You were saying
Good.
You were saying it's the watered down version. So
When I say watered down, it's more just the basics, like who the gods were. Yeah, different stories. Like for right now, we're in Norse mythology. We completed our unit on Egyptian mythology. They did their scroll projects. They found out a lot of different information about maybe it was Maat, maybe it was Anubis, could be Osiris, whoever they chose to research. Right now, we have studied some about Odin, about his ravens, Hugin and Munin. We've done some studies on the 9 realms and the Yggdrasil tree. We did studies on Sif. They're still completely confused as to why Marvel made her with dark hair when in Norse mythology she was a blonde. And then our next one, we will go into Idun and the golden apples. So that will be the next one next week.
Yeah, isn't that funny? How the sort of multiculturalism, in essence, sometimes the forced multiculturalism of what needs to happen on the movie sets in order to sell a movie these days, and so I mean, you take a Norse mythology is Norse mythology. I mean, it doesn't apologize for itself. Those were relatively heterogeneous populations over there, so it is what it is. It's
Nope. Thor was a redhead.
the fact,
But Marvel had to take them down.
original redheads, right?
Yeah.
Right, exactly. So people have their own ideas, I guess. We would ask Stan Lee, but he's passed away, so maybe we can have a seance for it.
No, but I mean, the kids enjoyed the Egyptian. They really did. The group that we have now, and it seems that they are definitely getting into the stories of the gods and goddesses of Norse mythology. I know that at least my girls are. I definitely had more girls sign up for this class this time.
That's interesting.
Girls are generally more academic and more into learning than boys are, especially at that age.
Yeah, my boys are a little goofy.
I don't think we ever grow out of that, but but absolutely.
We're all
Well, that's awesome. Absolutely. So, Wayne, what do you think? We talked a lot about, some spirituality, some cryptids and stuff over on your show, your guys' show. But I wanted to get a sense of, for our audience, kind of how this started for you. I know it started from one particular event that sort of catalyzed you guys into coming on board and becoming part of the paranormal / cryptid community. And if you could just relate that quickly, and then we can talk about kind of, what your next steps were. That could be.
Yeah, so back in March 9th of 2018, Michelle and I were leaving a session of late night full contact bingo with angry old ladies that wanted to try to kill us for playing bingo and not being over the age of 70. And they had their knives out and everything. So, sorry, ladies, but we did take your money. That's your fault. But anyways.
Now, hang on 1 second. Did you have those two markers where they're going at the board like with 2 markers at a time? Like, that's the full contact part?
Yeah. Well, no, the full contact part is if you yell bingo, they turn around and they start drawing knives out of their purses and stuff like, oh, okay, we want to check how old you are. And, oh, wait a minute, you're under the age of 50? You're getting,
your fake contact is me smacking them in the head to call the bingo wrong. Sorry.
That she sleeps on a bed of lies.
I see.
So, but no, we left that place. It was late night bingo, and it was about 2:30 in the morning as we were heading westbound on a road, strangely enough, here in southeast Michigan near Detroit called Ford Road. And as we were driving on that road, I saw these 3 bright lights about 1.5 miles, 2 miles, where we had to go in to the expressway. And at that vantage point, I was like, oh, these are landing lights from airliner, and that thing is way low. And if I'm interpreting this right as an airliner, that thing's going to crash right in front of us and wipe us out. And it's going to be full of gas and stuff because Detroit Metro is about 15, 18 miles to the south of where we were. Right now, we live right next to the thing. But where we were at the time was, this, we're in a place basically Wayne Westland / Canton, Michigan. They kind of butt up against each other. And so I'm like, well, that thing's going to be full of fuel. It's coming down right in front of us. There's not much we're going to be able to do. So, and Michelle's like, well, what are those lights? I said, well, they might be landing lights. And, this just going to keep going. As we get closer and closer, we notice that they're not moving. At least to me, I didn't see it moving very much, which was making me go kind of like, those are big landing lights. It's very, very slow. They should be getting brighter as they're getting closer to us, but they're kind of just sitting there. And Michelle's watching it, and we're getting closer and closer and closer. And as we get closer, within, maybe a 1/4 mile of it, we start to notice this shape, this outline of what looked like a big black triangle. Now, like I said, there's Detroit Metro about 18 miles, 20 miles to the south of where we were. There's also another airport in a town called Ypsilanti, not too far from there, and that's called Willow Run. It's an old World War II big landing strip. They do air shows and stuff there, but if anything goes in and out of there, it's small aircraft now. It used to be like a cargo airport and things, but they moved all that to Metro Detroit. So it's really just now being used for general aviation and things like that.
Well, there's also a tiny little itty bitty airport in Canton that like maybe a Cessna would fly out of.
Yeah. So there was no way this thing that was in the air was from that place. So as we're looking at it, it's starting to take shape right in front of us. Michelle looks at me and says, her famous line of,
oh, when did our military get that?
Yeah. So, and I'm like, our military doesn't have anything like that. And we're getting closer and closer, and I can start to make out, and this is 2:30 in the morning in March. And so it was cold. There was some snow on the ground. As we're getting closer, I'm starting to mark in the details of what I'm seeing. And I can see that there are these huge hemisphere globes in the corner of each of the craft, each corner of the craft. It was a triangle. So obviously there was 3. I noticed that it was maybe about 150 feet above the ground. And as bright as those lights were, it should have been casting like spotlights on the ground. There was nothing on the ground. Michelle's hanging out the window of my Jeep going, it's not making any sound. I think she was louder than
that. Likes to go over to the IKEA back store and a couple of hotels before it was finally
beeping. It was beeping.
It finally settled on the south side of Ford Road over a restaurant and over another hotel there and just sat still.
Yeah, so we're going underneath it and we're trying to get on the expressway, and it does like a 200 or 300 degree, 360 to get onto the expressway, maybe a 270 degree turn. So we can go from going west, make a right and spin around and head 200 or 180 degrees to the south. So as we're going under it, I'm looking at the belly of it and it looks like a heat mirage and it's just black. And it looked like a hot black top, maybe in late July, early August. And all I could see was this wavering effect around it with the light. Now, Michelle will tell you she saw,
it looks like a motherboard. Like all the different lines.
Yeah, like a texture to it almost. And for me, it was just like I'm looking up. And as I was doing that and getting closer to it and trying to get up onto the off ramp to get on, or the on ramp to get onto the expressway, I get this voice in my head that says, "You don't belong here. Get away. You don't belong here." And then instant terror. Something I've never felt before in my life, like immediately after that. And so I got on that ramp and I started gunning it, like trying to get us out of there. And then I'm watching her watch it out the window. And she's like, "It's moving parallel to us." So we're going south now on the expressway, and the expressway was 275.
And so was it.
And it was just hovering over or just cruising right above the trees and I was pushing my Jeep, and pushing a 4-door Jeep Wrangler is like riding a bull. It's like, it's bouncing around. That suspension doesn't like going faster than 75 miles an hour at best.
Yeah.
And, I'm pushing it to about 85 or 90. And that thing's just sitting right off the side. And Michelle got a really cool vantage point of it from her side, because she got to see what we would consider the back of it. And what did you see?
I saw 2 rectangles in each corner.
Yeah. Like
on the sign.
They were what? Red?
Yeah, they were red.
Okay. So almost like what we would consider like propulsion or engines, right? And so we eventually lost sight of it. We went down into like this little bit of a lower area. It's kind of a sound abatement area for the houses and things that are kind of close to the expressway. And when we got a clear view of the trees were gone, we were expecting to see it right off of our window again. It was gone. And so we got home a little bit later and we didn't really talk much about it for a couple days. And
both other was crazy stuff.
Yeah, each other. You're like, I'm just gonna go to bed.
And by the time we got home, it was about 3 a.m. So we were pretty cooked for the night.
So it was about 3 days later, or maybe a day and a half, 2 days later, that we sat down and I kind of said, I've been in the military. I've grown up around every single aircraft. I've been to huge air shows. I've never seen anything like that. And she's like, yeah, that made no sense. And I said, if something that big needs to have aerodynamics, I'm an earth and space science teacher. I study physics, I study chemistry and all that. And that broke every single freaking rule that I knew anything about. And the only thing that was going through my mind, maybe it was some type of a lighter than airship, some type of a blimp or something, but no, you would still hear that. It would still have some kind of engine. You still, blimps fly over and stuff. They still have a motor that's going. And so we talked about it and I said, why don't we start a Facebook group and we'll make it a private Facebook group. And we'll put our story up there and see if anybody responds. We started getting these responses to join the group because they were telling us, we want to join. We got something to tell you guys. So it wasn't other reports of triangles necessarily. It was other things. In 1994, I saw this stuff on these UFOs on the west side of Michigan. And that one guy comes in and he says, I've seen triangles on the east side of Michigan. And we started getting all these people joining, telling us all of these things, ghosts and all of the dogman. You know, you hear a dogman, like, what the hell is going on? Like all this flooding of people coming in. And within like 3 years, we had like 3,800 people that had joined from all around the world. Like we're just a little Michigan page, you know, what the hell's going on here? And we were deep and, you know, we were taking deep dives into some of these. And I looked at her and I said, why don't we start a podcast? We can tell our story. And if it goes really bad and it's really shitty, we'll just call it episode 0.
It was rough in the beginning.
Right. I said, you know, if it's episode 0, we can delete it and nobody will notice the missing thing and we'll see how this goes. And we recorded it and we started getting hits. Boom, boom, boom. Like, what in the world is going on? So we did about 3 shows and then we started having people contact us to come on and tell their story. And one of our first guests we had on was a guy from Flint, Michigan here. His name was Guy Merritt, who told us all about his strange encounters and everything that happened in 1994, March 18th of 94. Now, we can corroborate those because we've had 3 other witnesses that were in different parts of the state, but at the same night that had the experience with these triangles. One guy was near Selfridge Air National Guard Base and saw F-16 scrambled right over his head. He was a Iraqi vet with the Air Force. He came on the show and said, yeah, there was a triangle. It was just moving slow, quiet, right along the waterway here in Port Huron. And he's watching it and he could see the jets coming, 2 F-16s coming to intercept the thing. And he said it was like Star Trek. Snap, you know, you snap your fingers and it was like, pinch, it was gone. And the jets went screaming overhead. The other guy saw one. His name was Alex. He saw one in a field in Adrian, Michigan, kind of out in the middle of nowhere. And it upset him so bad. He still to this day, he has issues of dealing with what it was that he saw. He was by himself on a country bumpkin road out here. And he saw this thing and got this feeling of, you're not supposed to be here, you know? And then it was probably about 6 months later, I started having issues medically. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. I was starting to hallucinate because of all that stuff. I lost a ton of weight. I mean, I think I lost something like 25 pounds in like 2 weeks. My metabolism was going nuts. My beard turned white completely. My hair started falling out and I went to the hospital. I finally said, you know, I'm getting ready to start the school year. I'm trying to write on my whiteboard for the kids and my hands are shaking so bad I can't even write. So I'm like, okay, there is something definitely wrong. Go to the hospital. They do a blood test. I'm sitting in there. It's like 8 hours of sitting in the emergency room. And even a woman in the next curtain room besides me, she ends up coding and dying. And I'm like, and I'm freaking out. Like I am completely dialed up to 130. Like I'm ready to just start killing people. I don't know what's going on.
Wow.
I'm freaking out.
Yeah.
They do a blood test and stuff and say, there's nothing wrong with you. We can't find anything. Maybe it's MS. We're going to, refer you to a specialist to test you for MS. I'm like, this is bullshit. So I storm out of there. I come home. She's like, what is going on? I'm freaking out. So I jump on the computer and I check my test results. Because
He was doing it for about 4 weeks.
oh yeah, I was off. It was insane. Like if somebody would have bumped into me, I'd probably be in the jail cell, you know, for murder. It was crazy. And I look at the blood results and right there are 3 red flags: T3, T4, TSH, thyroid hormone number 3, thyroid hormone number 4, and TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone. T3, T4 were off charts in the red. Both of those thyroid hormones were off the chain. The thyroid stimulating hormone was at 0 because it works like a thermostat. If you create thyroid stimulating hormone, that is supposed to turn on your thyroid to make T3 and T4. If you have 0 TSH, that's supposed to turn off the creation of your thyroid hormones. And mine was through the roof. Like, I'm like, what the hell is going on? And that started, like I said, I probably started getting sick about 3 months after the encounter. And then the full effects happened about six months. And then I was diagnosed with Graves' disease, which men don't usually get. Men usually get hypothyroid, which is a low functioning thyroid. They end up getting pretty fat and out of shape and tired all the time and stuff. And they have to take more thyroid hormone. I was the opposite. And it's like really rare, especially for as young as I was at the time when that happened. So, the only thing I would chalk that up to is whatever that craft was, and it talked to me or whatever, it dosed me with something, maybe radiation or whatever.
I think we just radiated Alex out of here.
Yep.
Phew.
Yeah. He got abducted.
He disappeared.
I assume.
So, yeah. So,
No, but yeah, it was rough until, he found out his true diagnosis. But, and we'll have to share this with Alex later, but the trees in the area where this craft had settled, they've cleared all of that out.
Wow.
So, and I don't know if it's like a reconstruction of Ford Road onto 275, but it's very convenient that just happened to be the spot where that stopped.
Yep.
Yeah. It's pretty interesting. So, with all these UFO sightings and everything in Michigan, I mean, it sounds like, are a lot of these stories the same where they all felt like they had some kind of connection to this craft, like what you experienced, where it was kind of warning you off and saying you don't belong here?
We've seen some common threads.
Well, like with the triangles, like with the guy from Flint and with the guy from Adrian who dealt with this, and they were guests on our show. So one of our first, 3-4 episodes we did, they both said kind of the same thing I did. I didn't reveal what I had heard in my head until just within the last couple of years.
Well, and 94 was a hot year in Michigan anyhow. So there was an episode on Unsolved Mysteries with the the meteorologist.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jack Bashong, who is a friend of hers now, that they had contacted him after there were so many sightings, around Holland?
Yep.
Muskegon. He was in Muskegon.
He was running the radar. Yeah.
So at the same time that they had 300 sightings on the west side of the state, they were having just as many sightings over on the east side. We just did not necessarily get the news coverage at the time.
Yep.
So, but you figure everything.
And that was a different year.
It was 94.
Oh, yeah. It was a hot year for us.
Yeah, it was 2018 for us. It was 94 for our friend Guy. And then, like I said, the west side of the state and the east side of the state, it was like huge.
Yep. And it was all March time frame, though.
Yep.
It's one of the common things that you had asked, is there common connections? March and April seem to be the months for these triangular craft and a lot of other type of orbs and different types of ships like that on the west side of the state as well. Because, yeah, like Michelle was saying, the west side seemed more in 94. That got all the attention because they had radar data to back it up. Police and sheriffs were chasing them down and following them out to Lake Michigan. They had over 400 calls from people reporting these things in their backyard, flying by and all of this stuff. But on the east side of the state, they had these black triangles that were just creeping along and being seen by people. And then
it was more personal accounts. As in the west side, you had, when cops are calling it in.
Yep. yeah, clearly something's going on,
Yeah.
gating and following these things. And so, in your opinion, do you think these are interdimensional, extraterrestrial, or is there something entirely different?
Man, there's so many different ideas and like the hypothesis on that. It's really hard to tell. I think all of those things may be true all at the same time. I don't think they're necessarily all related to each other. They just seem to happen around the same time. They could be extra dimensional. They could be here. They could always have been here. They're just deep in the oceans, and we would never know. Even with all our technology, the ocean is so huge and so deep that, you know, there's these reports of USOs, underwater submerged objects now and things like that. But, you know, it's really hard to say because our minds can't comprehend a technology that can move faster than the speed of light. And you would need something like that for these beings, if they were extraterrestrial, that they would come from a different galaxy. The closest one is 8 light years away or something like that. So they would have to have some kind of technology to transverse that to get to us. So could they go into another dimension and show up here? That's possible. I mean, we don't really know. My thoughts on this, I would say, I'm thinking it's a combination of interdimensional and things that have probably already been here and they're still here. We just don't know. You know, we just don't have a record of them being here. And I think they've probably been here a while.
Sure. Yeah, and I think from that perspective, forgive me, I'm not an expert on Michigan or anything. I know it's a beautiful state and all.
Sure.
Any sacred sites or ley lines or anything that run through Michigan that could correlate to any of this, do you think?
Well, I'll tell you what, recently they have finally officially released the fact that there is like a Michigan Stonehenge, but it's in Grand Traverse Bay somewhere. They won't release the exact location of standing stones that are about 40 meters or 120 feet underwater. And they're standing stones that seem to point in directions like Stonehenge and toward other megalithic sites in Central America, if you trace out the lines and stuff. And they call it Michigan Stonehenge. And so the idea of ley lines and stuff, sure. I mean, that could be happening. I mean, we've got a magnetic field that's surrounding this planet and bouncing around and moving, and God knows what we're doing to it. You know, what kind of, you want to talk conspiracy theories, you know, you got HARP and all of these things that weather modifications and all these things that we're doing experiments on and setting off nuclear explosions, you know, 50 years ago, 60 years ago. And, you know, who knows? It's just.
We also have a lot of tribal land.
Oh, yeah.
The further north you go, we have a lot of tribal land.
And just south of us are the Great Serpent Mound in Ohio. There's all kinds of mounds and stuff around here. I mean, all through the Michigan, Ohio, and Indiana area, all the way down to the south. It's just nonstop things that are astrologically aligned. You know, it seems like they've been following things in the stars. There's petroglyphs of what look like aliens or the ant people. I mean, it's just plus Dogman. You know, we have cryptids here in Michigan. So that could be interdimensional. I mean, there's one guy that we're pretty close with. His name is Nathaniel Gillis, and his idea is that these are an interdimensional being that basically feeds on human psyche, and they learn to mimic from getting our heads, and they're evolving with our technology and our thoughts of things. Because it was back, you know, if you look at it, a lot of these guys that are abducted and things, they see mantoids, right? Mantis. Well, you can look at Space Ghost, you know, in the 70s. And that was a cartoon. And then you have the reptilians. Well, there was V, and everybody's always talked about some kind of a reptilian human, dinosaurs and stuff. We have reptilian DNA in us and all of this. So, there's all of that stuff. But if there is a smart intelligence that is learning from us so that it can interact with us in these ways to get things from us that it wants, it's like the perfect chameleon. Some people might dress them up as, satanic and they're ghosts and this and that, but that could be one of these entities or a bunch of these entities appearing to you and reading your mind, studying you, and then appearing as a succubus, let's say, a former, ex-girlfriend, ex-boyfriend, and you think you're just having a dream, having sex with them or something. And then the next thing you know, you wake up and they're right in front of your face. It's not a dream. And it's this entity. And they're trying to replicate their, the aliens want to replicate, right? They say that's why people are being abducted and there's babies and hybrids and this kind of stuff. Well, it could be these entities. They need to continue their own existence is kind of the theory with Nathaniel. And, I'm on the fence with that as well. But, they are creating themselves from themselves using humans as like the incubators. So, yeah. So there's all kinds of things, man. It really depends on what you want to subscribe to and stuff. And because I can't take a 100% scientific approach on this stuff and, run an experiment and get measurable data and things and we go past that place all the time. We don't see anything ever again. It's like, I can't say for sure.
Yeah, that's the frustrating part, right? Because you'd never know for sure, and you could speculate, you could come up with all kinds of theories, but trying to scientifically prove it's just like the paranormal and also the cryptids. It's to scientifically prove they're there. I believe they're there. I think a lot of people do, but you also have the individuals that are out there and it's just like, I don't know. I think it's all hearsay and BS or whatever else. And then
I think that there's so many people who have doctored up in AI just enough videos that it is kind of turned people off.
Sure. Yeah. I think that's the bigger struggle now with AI. People are posting all kinds of images. I mean, lately, I don't know I'm sure you've seen all these, figurines that people keep posting. It's just like, come on, guys.
I personally like the ones where the mountain like opens up and the giant builds back in.
Yeah, those are fantastic, aren't they?
I was like, that's some cool AI.
Yeah.
I think I saw it in a movie.
And then with the ability to replicate voices and everything else nowadays.
Yes.
I see all these like Joe Rogan podcasts where people are posting, it's like AI. He didn't even talk about that on his podcast, but I don't even know what to believe anymore.
Well, they use his voice too to sell things, right? These guys, hey, look, Joe Rogan is endorsing these special high-tech binoculars, and he's like, I have no idea what those are. So, and it's AI. It's AI replicating his voice.
Yeah, it's kind of insane, but I guess Michelle, from a mythology perspective, as somebody that's super well versed in it, do you think any of these mythological creatures and other things were actually, could they pertain to ancient aliens or, the reptilians, the cryptids that we know of today? It's like, were these actually representative? And
well, you figure the different mythologies had their own, we'll call them creatures. Nowadays, we would call them cryptids. As far as when we talk extraterrestrial, I think back to different crafts and sightings that they have even associated with the pyramids. That, it's not just, what do I want to say, within the last 50 years that they've been around, even if they, as much as they talk about the TR3B and anything that the government has reverse engineered, these have been depicted over time.
Right.
So the only thing that I have not seen any of, extraterrestrial really is in, I haven't found it in Greek and Roman. I haven't found it in Norse, but I also haven't looked.
Yeah.
So I kind of like to stay with the stories that I know, and the studies of the gods, in their place in culture during that time.
Well, I know the Mayans have different, I don't want to say hieroglyphs. I don't know if they're considered hieroglyphs, but there are some things that absolutely look like an aircraft. And
Yeah,
they built them to scale. They scaled them up, turned them into a remote control airplane, and the thing was flying perfectly. It looks like an airplane. Wings, a tail with a vertical fin, and then horizontal stabilizers, a front wing. I mean, it looks, and they built it and they flew it around and it flew perfectly. So I honestly think that what we think of as like dynastic Egyptians and what we see as the normal within the last 5,000 years of humans, maybe about 10,000 years before that, we were something completely not different. We were still human, but man, we were probably very, very advanced. And I think the pyramids and all of these things are the inner course to much more sophisticated either machines or some type of power source or something that was going on. And there was definitely like intercontinental trade. And what got left behind was, religion and stories of floods and all of this stuff. It's, that's how we are remembering it. And
well, remember the controversy. It's to how the Egyptians got their copper, and where the copper came from.
Yeah,
that's Upper Peninsula territory for us.
Yeah, there's a bunch of abandoned copper mines up there, and they think now it depends. If you go to a mainstream, archaeologist guy, he's going to tell you, oh no, that's not copper from Michigan. We've tried, we've tested all that, blah, blah, blah. And then you get other people that are like, no, that the isotope that's in that copper comes from Michigan, and they used it to make copper tools and stuff. So there was some type of trade and things going on where there is Egyptian, footprints.
See, those are the rabbit holes that I like to put out there with my kids, and then pray that they don't take it back to their social studies history teacher who has only taught them X, Y, and Z about Egypt.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's like, oh,
through ancient Egypt.
Well, I'll start talking numerology with them as far as like how many pieces Osiris was cut up into. They found what in the fish?
Yeah, and the interesting thing is they said in the hieroglyphs in Egypt, there's depictions of kangaroos, there's depictions of boomerangs. There's also what looks like redheaded people, and I think there's also some references to maybe the Maya as well. So, I think there's certainly travel going on that people don't realize. And
well, I got some breaking news for you guys if you want to put it on this podcast first.
Do it.
All right. I have it on really good authority from somebody.
That's promising.
May not be a guest. Well, might be coming up on our show here soon.
Okay.
But there is somebody down in Central America who he is friends with who has sent him pictures of ancient Egyptian figurines and carvings and stuff that they found in Mayan pyramids.
Oh.
So they've been coming from Africa over to South and Central America for a very long time. And it kind of goes with that whole idea about what's going on in the Grand Canyon and the areas that, you know, the one explorer who said he found a cave that was totally carved and decorated in Egyptian mythology and all that, you know, hieroglyphs and everything, and they won't let anybody go into that area. So
Are you talking about the Anunnaki ruins that are there, or something else?
I think it's something else. It's in the Grand Canyon itself.
Yeah.
I can't recall the name of it, but yeah, that they're, you know, just like they said,
Yeah, right.
what is it?
They won't allow anybody to go into that area because they said it's actually, you know, some kind of Egyptian hieroglyphs and all that.
Yeah. It was printed in Smithsonian papers or something in the early 1900s, and then that got retracted or hidden away. They don't talk about it anymore.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's the same thing like, you know, nobody was here, you know, Christopher Columbus first showed up and da-da-da. And then you have the Kensington Stone, you know, and that's been proven. And I believe Scott Walter, when he talks about, you know, he's a straight up scientist. He came up with a great way to figure out the age of the stone and when things were, you know, dating it and stuff and what it said. And absolutely, there were Vikings here. Now they're finding little stone huts and stuff along the coast of Newfoundland, and you know, so and that was after, you know, you're talking what, 800s or 1000 AD, something like that. I'm thinking way before that, that we are the descendants of a freaking cargo cult that survived a massive trauma and a massive extinction event, and we just barely squeaked by about 70,000 years ago. And then with the ending of the Younger Dryas, just, you know, 12,000 years ago, there was something else that just ended the ice age and rocked this planet, and we are what's left. But I think the first major extinction event for our species was about 74, 76,000 years ago, with the eruption of Mount Tubo in Indonesia, which scientists say created a genetic bottleneck. And they know this scientifically because we're all genetically related. And we were down to about 5,000, anywhere from about, well, they say 2 to 10,000 humans were left in South Africa. So that kind of blows away too the whole how we evolved and everything, because if all the other humans were wiped out, you know, what were they 70 some thousand years ago? So, and I think that's where a lot of these megalithic structures and stuff come from.
Right. Yeah, and like you alluded to, you're close to Serpent Hill there, and they haven't even really determined what that structure is, and it seems like it's kind of off limits to.
It's the model of a galaxy.
Yeah.
It models the summer solstice, winter solstice, and then the equinox in those humps. And then the mouth swallowing the egg is the actual Ouroboros. If you look at it, it looks like a snake's head biting its tail, but the center of the galaxy is in there, so it looks like it's biting or holding an egg in its mouth. That's to me, that's my understanding is exactly what that is.
Well, let me ask you guys.
These people were.
Let me ask you guys something that, you know, we talked about a little bit with Tim and Hogan, and to some extent with Scott Walter too. When Pangea was Pangea, right? So, and you had the entire certain. Oh, you probably know where I'm going with this, especially with. So we have the pyramids on the southern sides, let's call it, right? Because you got pyramids in Egypt, you got pyramids with the Aztecs, with the Mayans, all along kind of the what would be, I guess, the Gulf of Mexico or the Gulf of America, if you want to go that way.
Right.
But America. So I mean, it would bear to, you know, either it was supposed to be just on the southern side, or, and some people have said that there were pyramids also on the northern side, which have either been destroyed or other things. But they said that there were at one point some North American pyramid ideas. of what that could have been. So, any thoughts on that? Were you able to, or did you chat with anybody on that front?
Not necessarily, but I've looked into it kind of myself, and that would make sense that there may have been pyramids in the northern regions as well, and that during that time of Pangea, then if Pangea broke up and the Ice Age started, that would mean glaciers are starting to come down into North America and Europe and start stretching down, and they're going to wipe out anything as they start to grow and move. Any structure is going to get destroyed. And so if you like fast forward that over a couple million years or a couple 100 million years,
Yeah,
glaciers.
it was about 200 million years ago, right?
Right. Yeah. About 250 or so. So if that's happening, if there's that breakup, and then as that's happening, you start to have the ice sheets start to grow because now the global climate's changing because you're changing all of the ocean currents and everything, which is redistributing the heat from the equator and starts moving it around, causing all these kind of cataclysmic weather events. You start growing ice sheets, and anything that starts, getting snowed on and that snow does not retreat gets heavier and heavier and heavier. You talk 200 million years, it's going to scour. It's going to expand and retreat and just destroy anything. So it could, and then if you think about it, not only do you have that happening, but then fast forward to 12,500 years ago with the massive floods that are recorded in 150 different religions and mythologies, right? Now you have these massive floods coming off of these ice sheets, just scouring everything away, topsoil and everything that might have been left by these glaciers. Now it's all getting washed out and just broken up and spread across all over, the Central American plains. And some of them might look like erratics, these giant boulders that are dropped by the glaciers as they melt it. Well, if it's been ground down and there'd be no writing left on them, there'd be, even for stone, it would look like just a boulder, maybe even rounded, being dropped. So
Fast,
I mean,
especially with the idea,
yeah,
and I know you were talking about a little bit before, and we've covered it on the show to some extent, the idea of what the pyramids were kind of for, and that idea, like, were they power stations? Were they, and if so, maybe them being all around, had a purpose of every all of them pointing towards the ionosphere and gathering that energy there. I mean, what do you posit was that civilization might have looked like? I mean, do you have a sense?
my sense of it is that civilization had a technology where they were so in tune with the earth and its abilities and the minerals and everything within it that they learned how to harness lightning. They probably learned how to manipulate rock and stuff very easily. I mean, we still see evidence of that with the great scoop marks on the abandoned obelisk in Egypt, right? These giant scoop marks, and they're like, oh yeah, that's pounding stones. Get out of here. You can tell it looks like they use some type of an acid or it was some type of a device that could probably vibrate at such a tempo that it would liquefy the stone for them to scoop and cut. I mean, there's a lot of different ways you could do it. And I think it was it Tim Hogan that talked about that they used acid for cutting a lot of these stones and things. And that's what the pyramids, and if you talk to Christopher Dunn, who the Giza power plant idea, right? He shows evidence of electrodes being in these blocks that are up inside these little shafts inside the pyramids. Well, if you do your mixtures and alchemy of stuff, you're probably creating huge vats of acid that could be used for cutting stone. I mean, so power plants, acid factories, I mean, yes to all the above, probably. And that's why all these megalithic structures are all very similar. Japan, Indonesia, South East Asia, we find these things. I mean, Central America, Peru, Sacsayhuaman and Chichen Itza and all of these places. I mean, huge megalithic stones that, I'm sorry, the people of 12,000 years ago to present would not have done such a thing. There's no way they could do it. And they even say as such. They say that these things were left behind by our ancestors. And modern day archaeologists go, shut the hell up. You don't know what you're talking about. Yeah, that's nice. Your little stories are nice, but that don't mean anything. It was pounding rocks and chisels.
Nonsense.
Copper, dude.
I mean, utter. Now look, copper, which was, bronze, let's call it.
Bronze.
Is actually harder than we give it credit for. But either side, that the scale of what was done was just not possible. Like, we have no evidence to say, except by pure conjecture, that these cultures rose to that point. We know that they were at a point and then they had a decline. We don't know anything about how they got there. And so, I defy anybody else to show me, because I haven't. I mean, you go back to all the way to
nobody can.
To the Scorpion King, right? That was before the line of pharaohs. And what do we know?
Well, look at and Michelle, I think, dug into this more than I did with her mythology stuff, but look at the time of what they call Zet Tepi, right? The time before. And this is a record of Horus, and all of these guys were actually here. Like, these were real beings of some type. I don't know, Michelle, do you remember like the intricacies of Zet Tepi? I don't.
Not with my studies with the kids.
Okay.
Well, let me ask you this: do you guys buy into the Anunnaki myth? Do you think that sort of hybridization of the human race, or they basically created or were responsible for us creating mythology about them to try to explain what it was that happened at that time?
Michelle, what do you think? Do you got a thought on this?
Got a few thoughts, but I'm waiting to see what you come up with first.
Oh, wow. She's going to let me take
it close to the...
That's okay.
Get in there, Wade.
She is. My understanding of the Anunnaki, I believe they were like a real sect of people, of humans, and they were probably really, really, really advanced, is my gut feeling and what I'm thinking in my head. And then they were mythologized by people later on. And I don't think they were anything more than probably very, very advanced people that were probably doing some type of hybrid. I mean, we've been hybrid, we're eating different types of cows, and we've been doing this for ages. It's just, genetically modifying animals for food and stuff, and domesticated dogs. And, humans are very creative when it comes to that kind of stuff. And I think they were probably just humans that were dialed up, and they were probably very, very large too. I have a feeling that the ideas of actual giants, and that these guys, was this Nebuchadnezzar's time? Was he one of the Anunnaki, or
Nebuchadnezzar came later? But you bring up an interesting point. I've been involved in a breeding program of my co-hosts for quite a long time. And I've grown them bigger and bigger, and clearly I'm doing quite well with it. I think I'm nearly there. But answer me this, Wayne, if you will. And Michelle, jump in anytime. But you guys started your whole process with a UFO encounter, and you're telling me that's beyond the pale for these guys to not be from Nibiru, as Zechariah Sitchin says. You're like, there's no way these guys are aliens. They're clearly just advanced humans.
Well, I think there was probably a huge advanced humans. I mean, here on the planet, but you got to think how old the solar system is. I mean, we're saying Earth is like 4.2 billion years old. All right. So you have all that time and you have probably other life out there advancing and dying off and advancing and dying off and getting more and more advanced and things happening. And then we have humans that evolve on this planet. They start advancing themselves. And I think that there was probably some connection and probably some interaction between some type of extraterrestrial. Was it Nibiru? Was it from another galaxy or whatever? Probably interacting with our more advanced self, 70 some thousand years ago. And I mean, isn't the Veda text talking about, aircraft shooting each other down? There's evidence of nuclear explosions, nuclear glass in India and things like this that, we might call them myths, but it might be closer to history than anything else. So
Very possibly.
I'm not writing anything out. I did not, I'm not discounting anything, but there is some great arguments against the Sitchin thing because he got a lot of the translations and stuff wrong and he saw them the way that he wanted to see them. So again, it's like, who do you want to believe? Whose theories and who debunks and all that stuff? Everybody's got their bias. They want to see what they want to see. Like people will tell me, oh, that's the TR-3B that you guys saw. Yeah, not necessarily, because these triangular craft have been reported like we've reported for years upon years. And yet no military has wanted to be King Dingling and have an air show and have their triangle show up and hover and spin around and float and stuff. And trust me, one thing militaries and governments like to do is whip it out on the table and go, we're the big dogs now. Anybody want to play? Now you're going to listen to us. And that's what we've been doing as the United States for a couple hundred years. So we roll out B-2 bombers. We're now on B-21 Spirit bombers. We have the mother of all bombs, the Moab. We love drones. We got guys in Langley killing people over in Afghanistan and stuff. I mean, dude, and we make no bones about letting people know. If you mess with us, see that aircraft carrier? Ask the Houthis how that's going. They're not going to be very happy. And so, you attacked another shipping port going through the Strait of Hormuz there? Okay, we've got you. We'll be right there. And we are, literally. So, yeah. I don't know. That's just my thoughts on it. And humans like to show off. That's why we do air shows, and militaries always show up with their best aircraft. Even the Chinese fly around and let us film some of their secret stuff so we can go, what is that?
Well,
or a weather balloon.
I will
weather balloons.
I will agree with that to some extent, because I think obviously we want to show a show of force and we want to show some shiny new objects. I think that's predicated more on the people that are other than the United States that really want to try to one up if they can. But I think that stuff that's generations away that may or may not have been gotten from alien technology, I think just like, you have a TV that's just one stroke above what everybody else has got out there on the market, and you can make money with that. And you might have a TV that's 20 years ahead. You're not going to unveil it because you're going to want to make money on each iteration along the way. Like, why would you not? Why? Well, what benefit would it be to tell some guys? Well, because then everyone will try to jump up to, it's kind of like the Roger Bannister. No one can hit a 5-minute mile, or until he does, and now everybody's hitting it, right? So it's just once you break the paradigm and it becomes public, there's a weird thing that sort of tends to happen where guys will then just be able to, there's a quantum leap, and I don't know if they want that. it doesn't necessarily benefit us to do that, other than just putting our dick on the table, kind of thing. My apologies, Mich-
Well,
our locker room talk around here.
well, look at what they just recently unveiled. The F-47, right? Not only is this a 6th generation type of fighter craft, the thing carries drones with it that uses AI to help it fight.
Right.
So one jet can become a full squadron of robotically controlled, AI controlled drones.
Right.
To me, that sounds more superior than flying a gigantic black triangle over a crowded city as an experimental craft and picking on little old me and Michelle, a couple of teachers, and going, you don't belong here, get away from here. And by the way, here's a nice little dose of radiation to mess you up for a little while. Oh, and by the way, you're going to start a podcast and you're going to bring people on so they can tell their story so they don't feel as messed up as you guys did when you saw what you did. So you make sure that people aren't going too crazy thinking they're the only ones this is happening to. It's like, that's why we started this. It was a compulsion of, let's talk to people and let them know they're not alone. Like, this is real. We had no background in any of this at all. And I totally get, okay, let's just say that secret military aircraft will fly over or will break FAA rules, right? Because, well, they are the government. They're not going to catch them anyways, yada, yada. Okay, fine, 100%. But are you going to put that thing and park it over a busy city of a couple hundred or a couple million people and hope it don't crash or nothing goes wrong? And what is the purpose of doing that? If that is a secret aircraft, you are making the worst secret aircraft ever, because you've been seen since 1960 and probably even before that. Well, I mean, there's just things that logically don't make sense to me why they would do that. And things don't say secret long. And I don't know. I think the TR3B stuff was started as a cover story because they don't know what the hell these things are. And so sneaking it out there to have people talk about, and let's put a fake patent out there with all this gobbledygook on it, that if any scientist that I know I show it to goes, this is garbage, this that makes no sense. These equations, I don't know what the hell they're even trying to say. Anti-gravity, well, okay, no. If that was true, everybody would have anti-gravity right now by spinning Mercury around. So it's like, it doesn't make sense, but it makes for a great cover story if you're trying to beat counterintelligence guys from other, countries trying to figure out, what do you know about these black triangle things? They're showing up over here in Denmark. They're over here in the UK going crazy, and people reporting them left and right. I mean, again, I think it's a cover story. The government hates to admit that they don't know what the hell things are that are just coming into your airspace and making a mockery of you, and, F-16s trying to intercept you and you just disappear. Yeah. Just gone. And it was witnessed by people we've had on our show. Just disappear. Just,
what do you
like Star Trek, one guy said.
Merkabas?
And the F-16s were left in the dust.
What do you think of Merkabas as vehicles or meditative spaces, so to speak, that could lead to things like that?
Alex, you're breaking up. I can hear that.
I'm gonna try to improve my my station here. So I say, what do you think of Merkabas?
You were fine just a minute ago.
Yeah, I don't know what happened, but we'll try.
Merkabas.
Yeah, are you familiar with the concept?
Is that like the Tesseract type of a situation?
Yeah, exactly. It's like the people that they meditate under pyramids and things like that, and then they're basically or within pyramids. And the whole idea is that's what the
I
great
think AI got Alex.
from.
He was doing so good there.
The government's trying to censor us.
Yeah. We're not even live or anything. We're just trying to record.
Yeah. Well, let's just see how it goes. Can you guys hear me?
And here I am excited that I actually found some social studies curriculum on the Anunnaki.
That's cool. What did you find on that?
You know what? It just going into the basics of it, but also the myth that it was, was it beings from Planet X?
Beings from
It actually talks about the reptilian humanoids as far as the Anunnaki being reptilian humanoids that judge humans. I'm not kidding you. This is actually online.
I believe it.
So, and I knew that it was part of the Sumerian culture. I have not done a lot of digging into the Anunnaki. What I know is probably just the sheer basics and some of the rabbit hole stories.
So I think what they mistake for Anunnaki, at least according to the legend, there is what used to be the Ijiji, which were like the sort of Anunnaki underlings. They were the lizard people. The Anunnaki looked more like at least they're supposed to look more like the Babylonian kings with the long beards and the big hats and whatever else
weren't they depicted with wings and things as well?
Sometimes, yeah.
Some were.
Some were.
Yeah.
But I wanted to get back to the Markabas idea, because that's the idea where at least Sitchin talks about it, and some others do, where they come from Nibiru and or Mars by way of Markabas. In other words, you can meditate yourself to move between dimensions by modality known as a Markaba. In essence, along the lines of the way that the Star of David looks. So that's sort of a Markaba, right? So it's two triangles interlaced that can be functioned in various ways. We just had a podcast on Martinism, and we're pretty open. In fact, that Dave and I are Martinists, and we're part of that tradition. And their main symbol is what's called a pantacle. They call it a pantacle, which is it's the Star of David, but one of the triangles is black, the other one is white, on a field of with a circle of red all around it. And of course, that all has their own meaning as you sort of go around it. So yeah. But I want to see.
Now, is the Markaba supposed to be? Is that supposed to be? Is it triangles like the Star of David, or is it tetrahedrons, like 3-dimensional?
This is what it looks.
They're gonna.
Well, they're tetrahedrons.
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah, that's like sacred geometry stuff there.
Yeah. So that's the mark.
Okay.
But you could see how if you popped it out, it would be the 3-dimensionally. It would be something that you could sort of almost ride, inside of, kind of like the H.G. Wells time machine kind of thing, where it wouldn't necessarily go anywhere, but you would go and you would appear someplace else, right? Some other time and space. And it kind of goes with the idea of what Bashar was saying, where he said part of an object's attributes is its location. And literally, that object somewhere else is a different object. It's not the same object in two places. And so if you could get the location data on an object, you would be able to basically teleport there or teleport that object there.
Almost like quantum entanglement.
Correct. So
yeah,
and it goes into the Dune idea.
What is it? Spooky
action at a distance.
Spooky magic at a distance.
Yeah. So it's an interesting concept of being able to do that irrespective of time and space, right? So kind of a cool thing. But so what do you have to say, science teacher?
Hey, I'm all for it, that there could be beings out there that could do that.
Okay. Do you believe in the grave?
One thing I wanted to mention, when you look at the Anunnaki story, and we were just talking about the genetics behind humans, one of our good friends, and I'm not sure if he'll ever come on the podcast or not, but he works in that industry. He's, like a world-renowned geneticist too. And he basically said you could trace all human DNA back to essentially, I think it was about 150 people, like modern day humans. So the question becomes like, what happened to the rest of them? And was it the Great Floods? Was it something else? And it's hard to say whether, well, Anunnaki story, like even the Sumerians as an example. Yeah, if you look at the ancient city of Babylon, the Sumerians, there's no real history as to how that came about. Like they just kind of cropped.
That's right.
It seems like, and went by the wayside as well.
Yeah, I mean, you're correct. And, if you look up the eruption of Mount Tobo or Tobo, however you pronounce it in Indonesia, a super volcano that went boom 76,000 years ago, they say right in the encyclopedia that, it was about 1,000 to 5,000 or 10,000 mating pairs that we all come from. And if you go back further, I'm sure it's probably, now you're getting into this thing where humans, actually Martians, and they had to escape Mars and come here, and we are the survivors of that. I mean, sounds crazy, but if they actually start finding stuff on Mars, some megalithic structures or something, I mean, I don't rule anything out. And especially like with the consciousness, you have creatures out there or beings out there that might be extremely advanced with their meditations and being able to project their consciousness to another location, especially like Earth. I mean, our Earth has been through a hell of a beating over the last, 500 million years easily. And, Earth is traumatized in a way, but we have such a power source here in the Earth itself. I'm convinced that this could be a great location for these type of beings, and maybe that's what some of these craft are. They are manifestations of their consciousness exploring Earth. And they want to explore us and see what we're doing. And are we still the same humans they were in contact with thousands and thousands of years ago? I mean, so there's so many rabbit holes you can go on this, and they all start to make sense after a while. And you just try to look. I mean, my main purpose in looking into all this stuff is trying to find the key threads that unites all of them, kind of like a unifying idea of what this all is. And I think it all is based around Earth and our power source, our magnetic field, our consciousness here. We're the only creature we know of running around with consciousness like ours on this planet. Mm. We're building airplanes. Cheetahs are not,
Right.
So we're more than just hairless apes. I think we're a little bit more divine, and we've got the consciousness and stuff that probably attracts some of these beings wondering what the hell are we doing? So who knows? The common foundation might be us.
Yeah, and I think there's something to be said. Like, obviously, we have no idea.
Yeah.
Like, obviously, if you look at it from a biblical perspective, you had Adam and Eve, we're humans. But, clearly, I'm sure we've been visited. There's all kinds of stories about, craft in the sky. And, I know when we had Tim Hogan on, he was talking about, they talked about King Solomon's flying ship, that he would actually fly between, Ethiopia and his temple. And it was just, it's kind of fascinating to think that the ancients were interacting with some kind of intelligent beings. And, I think it's crazy to think, even with the pyramids, I know they've found, I think, beeswax everywhere because they said if they used acid to cut through the granite, the only thing that would actually stop that acid was wax, from the bees. But still, the precision, the blocks, the harmonics of it, it's just the resonance it creates. It's just like, yeah.
And moving those things. Yeah. Okay. All right. So they used acid. Okay, fine. They used acid to cut and all that stuff. Okay. Precision. Okay. Well, Alex is like, I'll show you precision. I'm here.
And just, I'm just like, oh shit, the Anunnaki's here.
Yeah. Yep. But you know, you look at all that. Okay, now, all right, guy, explain to me how they move these things. What water, sand, and rolling stones or something. Now maybe that's what those pounding stones were for. Maybe those pounding stones were more like ball bearings, and could you lay those out and you could move some blocks probably pretty good, but I don't know.
Well, it's interesting because, they talk about levitation, and obviously with frequency and vibration, you can levitate objects. I think when we had Carl Petrie on the show, he talked about, because he has the ability, it's retrocognition and kind of retro viewing. So he's able to kind of go back in time and look at stuff from the past, he says. And yeah, he said even like Stonehenge, he felt like it was actually built by levitating rocks, and they were just whoever put that there. He didn't really allude to who built it, but it sounded like they were using levitation methods to do that. So,
and the precision and all of those megalithic structures always seem to point to other megalithic structures on the other sides of the planet. Like America's Stonehenge. I don't know if you've been there. Have you been there?
No. If you go up to
Mystery Hill. Yeah, go check that out. You guys are in Jersey. Go check that out.
It's like a 4-hour drive. I'll have to go up there this summer, maybe.
Yeah, it's beautiful, and you'll find some amazing things, how these walls are created and shaped and their position. And then there's the standing stones that are there marking off the equinoxes, but it also marks off, if you draw a straight line, it goes right through one of the triathlons of the or trilithons of the of Stonehenge. And they also mapped out other areas that they didn't tell me about. I got to get Dennis Stone back on the podcast, but they go straight lines, point you right on the right bearing to get to some place in Central America, one of the pyramids. And yeah, I mean, it's just crazy. And I don't know. Can I share something with you guys?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, of course.
Okay. So this really blew my mind. Let me see. Presentation. Let's see. Screen. Let's see. Window. Here we go. Edit. Okay. So when I went back to college at a very older age, let's just say, I had to do an art project. Okay. Can you guys see that still?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because it's taken up my whole screen, so I can't see you guys.
Yeah.
So this is one thing that blew my mind and kind of started.
You see, you have to activate your office there.
Yeah. No, I'm paying for that. Thank you very much. What I got to do is get the. I'm a teacher. I'm a cheapskate, and I'm also Scottish, so I'm doubly cheapskate.
God, yeah.
But
There's an academic discount,
You're right. So, you know what? It's not sharing. It's over here on this screen. Hold on. That's what's going on. Man. Okay, so I'm doing like full screen.
Yeah.
But it's showing up on this monitor instead of that monitor. Let's see. I got to fix that.
The presentation mode you went into, yes, it's still showing us just the slides.
Yeah. Where is that slideshow?
There it is. From the beginning.
Monitor.
All the way to the left.
All the way to the left.
Left.
Oh.
Your other left.
How about this? Yeah.
The other one.
1 second. All the time when you're crazy. Hold on.
You got him too, folks.
See, remember when he said full contact bingo? This is why.
Really? So primary monitor. No.
Just click on the thing from beginning.
Over to the left. There you go.
See? Nothing. Man, why?
Maybe because it says because your office product is in it.
Yeah, I guess so.
Anyway, let's go through the slides.
Yeah, so we'll go through this way. So I did all this research on the Great Pyramid because I was in an art history of art class.
Hmm.
So I started going down this rabbit hole. They're saying this was built by Khufu 2530 BCE, took about 20 years to complete. Talks about, you guys know all these measurements and all this stuff and all that good stuff. Here's what gets me. I want to pop this up here. Okay, so this is the typical grand gallery, what they call it, even though there's no depictions in there of anything. You guys all know this, and everybody that's watching this already knows all this stuff. But you guys are all used to seeing this elevation, right? In every textbook, in every picture, when they want to show you what the interior of the pyramid looks like, you're always looking, so you're looking west in this situation, okay? Here comes the big reveal. What if you looked a different way? What if you sliced it in a different direction? That right there is a pharaoh. How did they do that? And nobody talks about this because that's another beautiful piece of evidence that shows that these pyramids were much more than just a burial chamber, which they never found anything buried in it.
Well,
All right.
so how this is a pharaoh, I'm not getting something here.
There's your crown.
Okay.
It sits up on the third eye. This is the neck. The queen's chamber is his heart, where his heart would be, this queen. This is the intestines, legs down to the grotto, and then his feet.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's interesting.
So it would look like,
I can't dismiss it out of hand, I'll say that. I'm not quite resonating with it at the moment, but
Yeah, but now even with that latest, with the SAR scans that they did, and now that you know that there's this giant, possibly columns going down underneath that, it certainly, it seems like to that subterranean chamber, and you could kind of see that little pillar or whatever that is. That might actually be one of those giant pillars. Then
very well.
yeah. So I'll try to zoom in. So I found this information when they were talking about the Book of the Dead. And this guy's website was called The Pyramid of Man. And this is a depiction of, I think it's supposed to be, who's the god of the dead? Because he's looking to the west.
Any time was
Osiris.
Anubis.
Anubis, yeah. That's the jackal head.
The god, yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Osiris is the dead god. So he's the one that comes back to life.
so yeah,
The god of the underworld.
he's the god of the underworld, whereas his son Anubis is the guardian of the dead, I think.
Yeah. So and if you scale this properly, if you scale it to all the Egyptian art canon, the way that they made all their statues, it breaks into cubits of the crown of the head at the third eye is 18. The belly button is 11, and that's where they found the entrance on the Great Pyramid was at that scale. And then obviously 0 would be the feet. So when you break it up, and that's how it would sit inside the pyramid, if you could do a cut through and turn that image, instead of looking at the western elevation, you're looking at the northern elevation or the southern elevation, and you see there's a dude inside the pyramid looking to the west. So it's not simply, and then if you look at how they break up all of their artwork into these cubits, every 11 cubits up is the belly button, the source of life, and the brain or the consciousness or the soul is up at the third eye is up at 18. And it's on all, if you scale all of their artwork to the same proportions, you can see the same thing is carried out. And you can even scale down Osiris in the pyramid and overlay it over pretty much any statue or image that's standing, and it will fit.
Good.
Exact. Yeah. So, and then here is the kind of the layout on a human body of what these represent.
Well, if this theory is correct, you've just laid out a much greater case for the Merkaba, because it's a human inside a pyramidic structure.
A pyramid, yeah.
Think about that.
By the way, that pyramid has,
Yeah.
and that pyramid has how many sides? 8. It's not 4.
Right.
It's 8
Mhm.
because the sides of the pyramid are kind of concaved, and you can see where they're divided. So if it's ancient dynastic Egyptians, just regular old dudes piling blocks on for 20 years, how in the world did they make that? It's like the 3D relief carvings of Göbekli Tepe. Right? That's what I'm saying. These things are older, man. These things are older and were built with a purpose, and it centers around humans, our consciousness, our heart,
Right.
and the earth. So that's where I'm at with all of that. And they understood earthquakes. Yeah, they understood earthquakes. They understood seismic energy. Those gigantic, rock orbs that they find all over the place that they say are, just kind of cast from volcanoes that erupted. No. And then they're hollow. They used to break into them thinking they were treasure. And all these different size, like orbs and stuff, like the Olmec heads, and you find those orb stones and stuff, and they break into them and they're hollow. There's nothing in them. Well, that's the perfect way to stop a secondary wave which rolls the ground and might take out your structure, is if you build your foundation on top of these things and they're hollow, because secondary waves do not travel through gas or liquids. So they could have been filled with a liquid at a time. So you build a structure on top of it. You don't want it to get knocked down. Put it on top of liquid. So crazy stuff.
Well, Nick, I think the other interesting thing, I feel like when you look at ancient Egypt too, it was supposed to be a very fertile place, right? Grasslands, you had savannas, lakes, whatever there. Supposedly, they claim because of the Earth's wobble, the moon got weaker, and I guess they claim it changed the rainfall and such, and it became this barren wasteland all of a sudden. But one of our other guests actually said he felt, there's the South Atlantic anomaly, excuse me. He thinks that was actually over Egypt at one point, had it transitioned and moved to the South Atlantic at this point.
Hey,
he derived that. I'm not 100% certain, but yeah, it's kind of interesting that you have these ancient, like even in Iraq, right, with, I guess like Mesopotamia, the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, and all these, they claim it was so fertile. It's like, how did it become a desert so quickly?
Well, and they won't tell you the time frame. I don't think they're telling you the right time frame. It was fertile and stuff up until about 12,000 years ago. Because if you look at, if you have a flood come through there, if you look at satellite imagery of Western Africa and the whole Sahara Desert, you look at that, it looks like it was scoured. Like it just looks like, you can pull up Google Maps and look at the topography. It just looks like it was washed out to the Atlantic Ocean. Hundreds and hundreds of thousands of miles just washed away. So, I bet you eventually they're going to find there's a huge network of cities and stuff underneath that sand.
Yeah,
there could be. And also in the jungles of the Amazon, I mean.
Oh, absolutely. The Amazon's man-made. Terra Preta.
Yeah.
That's a man-made constructed biochar that has been allowed to grow wild, and we call it the Amazon. And it's the only soil that we know that can clear, CO2. It can replicate. It can continuously grow. I mean, it's like a miracle soil, and everybody's worried about us losing our topsoil. It's like, make that stuff. Oh, you can't? Well, how did the ancient people do it?
Exactly.
They can't make terra preta in terms of, even if you were to, let's say, replant it someplace else, kind of thing.
Well, it has been found all over the world. So, but not in mass quantities. Obviously, there was some, like, it seems like South America was whatever the catastrophe that happened 12,000 years ago, somewhere in that time frame, whatever happened over that time span, South America was kind of left alone. It seems like that, things south of the equator did not get beat up too bad, except for maybe Egypt and things. It depends on how much of the ice melted over there and all of that stuff.
Right.
So I don't know, but I mean, there's the whole Doggerland idea, right? The UK is actually part of Europe, but we see water there now. That was all fertile land.
Look.
The ocean has risen 400 feet, 400 meters, something like that, in a pretty fast amount of time since 12,000 years ago. So what is our flooded continental shelves all the way around the planet actually was above water level. So anybody that was living there is gone. Anything that was there is wiped out by the oceans. So
what do you think of
that's your mythology. Probably an actual, some type of structure, I'm thinking. And there's also like the Japanese, right, off the coast of Japan, is that structure that they say is naturally made. Nice right angles and all of that, of very hard granite rock. No. Some kind of structure. And I'm sure that's probably what was going on with the Bimini Road too.
Probably.
But, all the money's in drilling for natural gas and oil and stuff, not for exploring history, historical facts or, anything like that. So we'll probably never find out.
Oh, I'm sure we will. In fact, Bashar says that it won't be too much longer. I think he said it was 50 years out.
I hope so.
Said that maybe 20 years ago or something like that, where they said that he was talking about something having to do with the moons of Saturn, maybe Titan, Io, some other stuff, where they said that there's repositories of human history and interaction. He's of the opinion that we came from other places, and this is maybe our second or our third home over time. And and whether that's the case.
Well, we pretty much know.
Right. Go ahead.
Well, we pretty much know that, like, our sun is either a second or third generation star.
Look.
So it was a star, it blew up, went supernova. So it just means that there was a star here. It blew up, went supernova, was a nebulous cloud, right? And then instead of continuing to expand and let the gas and dust all float away into the universe, there was a supernova that happened somewhere kind of close by, a few hundred light years away. That energy caused that nebula to start collapsing again.
Huh.
And so the star began, it's called the nebula condensation theory, and it's the leading solar system formation theory out there, that we are either a second or our sun is a second or a third generation star. And so all the material that makes up our solar system came from those previous stars that supernovaed over the last, 15 billion years.
Yeah, but I mean, think about the odds of something like that happening realistically. I mean, not only
exactly
once, it happens twice. that just in the nick of time, there's some sort of a supernova somewhere that's just close enough to get us to reconstitute again? I mean, that's nuts.
Well, that's can tell you I know. It's what is taught in all the textbooks right now. I know because I teach it.
Jesus.
It's in the textbooks. It's called the solar system nebula, or the nebula solar system condensation theory.
So they'd rather believe that
a nebulous
intelligent design. That's completely out of bounds, but the nebula condensation theory, which sounds like a great cocktail, is somehow the leading theory of the day. Okay. Michelle, you buying this?
Yep.
I honestly, I don't know.
She wants to go back to mythology.
Well, I don't blame her. I would too.
No, it is been a long week.
Because it sounds like science has just turned the corner into complete nonsense.
Oh,
So
it's actually in my textbook with my students.
I believe
He starts going through textbook material and everything that he has researched, and I'm telling you, my brain explodes.
She can't handle it.
so. You guys are teachers. Hey, I'll just ask you because we're almost out of time here, but I just want to ask you an kind of off the wall question. Did you ever hear of the 5-foot shelf?
No.
That ring a bell? So back around the turn of the century, the Harvard put out an educational system where they thought, well, if you can't get to the college, you could get an entire college education within the bounds of a 5-foot shelf, like all the books you would need to get a full college education. And they still have them around. They haven't printed them in a long time, obviously. I think the last iteration was somewhere in the 20s or the 30s, but it was you can still get them on eBay. I think they're a couple $1,000, and obviously the science is out of whack, or maybe it isn't, considering our science is pretty wacky these days. But the art and the literature and everything that you would have. So it's kind of a cool idea. It was like the first way of like, hey, you don't have to go to a college to get an education. You could get an education on your own if you're driven enough to do it, kind of thing. I think I thought it was kind of a cool idea.
Yeah. By the way, go. So you don't think I'm absolutely insane. This is my textbook that is used in my school. It's the solar nebula condensation theory. The theory suggests that the sun and the planets all formed from the same nebula, which is believed to have been made up of 98% hydrogen and helium and 2% heavier elements produced by earlier supernova explosions. This same composition is exactly what we see in the sun today and should also reflect the composition of the planets if the theory is accurate. And then they go into, here's what they think happened. Yeah.
And I guess if you condense that through a gym sock, you get some pretty good bourbon. Yeah, I don't know.
Probably.
Exactly.
Yep.
Dave, do you have any final thoughts or lightning round questions for our guest?
Lightning round or final thoughts. And I was just looking it up on, you could actually get some of these 5-foot book sets for not that much. I mean, it's not the complete set, but it's like 300.
See, and I wouldn't see what sort of literature that they included, because what one person, even somebody from Harvard, I don't care, interprets as, world-renowned literature.
Hmm?
And what does that mean?
Well, it was basically at that point, I think, possibly the class. It was probably a fair amount of English classics. The ideas of what people were reading at the time. Ulysses and other such kind of Paradise Lost and those kinds of things. Probably.
Yeah, I thought I was being fancy by having the trivium and the quadrivium.
You are being fancy.
So I was like,
You'd say
I am.
Fancy.
Yeah, rhetoric, grammar, and what's the other one? Oh, God. I can't remember.
rhetoric,
I'm getting old.
being, logic.
The trivium, logic, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the 3, 4, 5 pyramid, or triangle, sorry. Yeah.
Well, it's funny because after that, so what are the 7 liberal arts and sciences, right? So you've got grammar, rhetoric, logic, arithmetic, geometry, physics, and astronomy. So if you have those, you've got a pretty good system of understanding the world around you. Geometry probably being the most important of all of those because it sort of hits at the various formations.
Yeah, and I got all my notes here for you guys.
Oh, there we go.
Well, and sacred geometry notes.
Well, you talk about.
I know that I've been working on, because that goes into my theory of the universe just being a giant timepiece.
Oh, like your watchmaker god kind of thing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's what I'm thinking, because when you look at how, you brought up intelligent design, when you look at how all these numbers play out, and I'm fascinated by numbers, especially with geometry, and you look at the precision of, our cycles, our measurements. A 24-hour day is 60 minutes. That's 1,440 minutes. Add those together, 9. Right, 1,440 minutes times 60 seconds is 86,400 seconds. Add those together, 9.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny because when we saw our craft, you add those numbers together, it was 9. So it's like all of this stuff. 1 foot is 12 inches. 1 square foot is 144 inches. 1 cubic foot is 1,728 cubic inches. A square yard. And this is why, and I agree with Randall Carlson, when we talk to him, I agree with him. We need to keep this empirical system alive because it keeps all of these numbers and things tied in. Now, you can learn the metric system if you want easy multiples of 10 and whatever else. But this stuff has a lot deeper meaning that all coincides with movements of things in the universe and around us and everything. And I think this stuff is super important. A triangle is 60 degrees, times 3, 180 degrees, half of a circle, right? 1, 8, and 0 is 9. 360-degree circle is 9.
But are you
start.
Are you thinking that if that those same ratios and stuff don't show up in the metric system?
I'm sure they probably do. I just haven't haven't dug into it. They might be there somewhere, but I'm more at like it would be. But I'm just digging into the empirical system and the different, isohedrons and, dodecahedrons and the Platonic solids and things like that. Because, I learned those in college before I started learning any of this, because that's how they say that the molecules, the atoms, arrange themselves to create certain elements. Like silicon is a tetrahedron, right? So that's the way they connect together, and that's the way they say the atoms align themselves.
Huh.
It's all like, Plato was saying. We use that in modern day, and it works still. We just put fancy numbers on it, but it still works.
Yeah, there was a quick thing. I saw a video by Deepak Chopra today, and he was talking about Maharishi Mahesh Yoga, the yogi, the guy who came up with TM, with transcendental meditation, and he was talking about how Chopra was a scientist and was looking at various ways, mathematician, and then he said none of that stuff really exists. It's just our overlapping of something else onto the cosmos to try to make sense of it. Think about the celestial and the cosmic forces behind all this stuff, and that's what is most important. The stuff that's behind all the math, the stuff that drives all the stuff that is illustrated by the math. Like, focus on that. And he said that was a very cool way to think about it. And it drove him into metaphysics and other things like that. So,
Well, we could be seeing how the universe is expressing its own consciousness through these types of movements and these measurements. I mean, I think they figured this out thousands of years ago when they were building the pyramid, because with the measurements of the pyramid, it turns out at the right, if you use the right scaling, at 1 to 43,200, which that number sounds pretty familiar. If you do that scaling, you have a perfect, map of the northern hemisphere.
sure.
Right? You just take the measurements of the pyramid, depending on if you go from the socle or from the base, and you measure that and you multiply it by those numbers, and you end up with that ratio. It's insane. It's just like the moon. The moon directly covers the sun. What are the chances of our one moon actually being able to eclipse the sun? The sun is 93 million miles away, but it is the perfect size to eclipse the sun completely.
I wouldn't mind
No other bears do that.
that would be a very interesting question to ask him, I think. It gives an
Yeah.
idea to certain things.
Not to mention it just interrupts the tides and other things just enough that it doesn't completely screw up the world.
Yeah, and it keeps the planet stable now, right? So it wobbles, but not like people think it wobbles. It's just the North Pole points to different stars as we go through precession. So it's not wobbling, but it would if we didn't have the moon. This place would be a wild ride.
It would be
Yeah.
a ride. Well,
Yep.
I really want to thank you guys for coming on the show tonight.
Absolutely.
I have one thing before we go.
Oh, you do, huh?
I was going to ask,
Please do not ask me a math question.
Michelle, let's do quick.
is the
That one 4. I will never say that it's 5.
I was going to say, as individuals who had the encounter you had and obviously started your channel, and like you alluded to earlier, how do people reach out to yourselves, find your podcast, but also just in general, the support structure and group that you've kind of formed and found? Because clearly a lot of people, when they encounter this type of paranormal activity or UFOs, they don't know who to turn to, because all their friends call them crazy. They think,
Yeah.
the Looney Tune or whatever. But it's definitely out there and it happens. So I just wanted to ask, obviously,
Yeah.
plug your channel, and also, how do people seek that information?
Well, they can always reach out to us, via email or through Facebook. So at michigan.ufo.mi.
Well, it's mi.
You read email. I couldn't type it in. It wouldn't let me.
Yeah, the email is mi.ufo.podcast@gmail.com. That'll get you right to our show email. You can get on Facebook and you just research or search up Michigan UFO Sightings and Paranormal Encounters podcast Facebook group. And you can just it'll ask you some questions, and then we'll approve you to join the group. Right now we're at 7,400 and something.
Please just click I agree to the rules, because we do try to keep the trolls out of there. Of course, sometimes
The government guys. Yeah, we get the government guys in there.
Yeah, so we've had some issues with government figures in there who have had to get escorted out.
Yep.
Government.
Let's see how else can you find us? You can find us on. We do have a Facebook page, like a website. Again, just look for Michigan UFO Sightings and Paranormal Encounters podcast. That'll take you to the Facebook group. We don't have our own website as of yet. A little pricey for us to get that made the way that we want it to. So we're just trying to save up some money for that. Let's see what else. Oh, you can listen to our podcast. We turn everything into an audio show after we're done. So you can find us on Spotify. We broadcast live every Sunday night at 8 p.m. Eastern on Rumble, on YouTube and on our Facebook page. You can watch us from there. But yeah, we're on Spotify, iTunes, iHeartRadio, you name it. And we just got an email this morning that said we are the number 27 out of 100. So we're in the top 30 podcast in Michigan, and we're top 10% globally of listened to podcasts. Yeah. Which was shocking because I was like, show me the money.
So after the shift with November Wayne Webero, we're 27 and 2 plus 7 is 9 and 9 is a sacred number. So I totally see this one later on and see that's about as far as my math is going. Because I am the true epitome of when they say if you don't use it, you lose it. I remember taking all the way through statistics in college, but I stopped using the majority of math in my field except for doing grades. And so therefore...
And you were up to calculus in high school.
Oh, I did calculus in high school. Yeah. I did all that. My brain just doesn't go that way anymore.
Yeah.
We have, we're psyched to have you guys on the show. Obviously, you have a huge retinue of people. As far as our coverage goes, it extends to Dave's mom and my mom. And outside of that, it's a gray area. But
And the old name to an outlaw.
We seem to be growing as well, which I'm very psyched about. So.
Oh, yeah.
It's very good. But yeah, thank you guys. Really, thank you so much for coming on the show. Thank you so much for being our friends and being part of this larger community that we can all share in and be a part of and talk about this really cool stuff that, and those of us that think that we're weird for loving this stuff and talking about it, then they can go off and,
until that happens to you,
watch Jeopardy or something until something weird happens to you. Then you're going to come crying back.
Till they have a prod.
That's right.
Till they get prodded by the Greys or something.
I was going to say one of these days we'll have to come back, the four of us, and start talking some paranormal stuff too.
Oh, absolutely.
Poor Alex.
No, yeah, that's not exactly the Bailey way. I'll sit here and be like, I'll put on my tinfoil hat and I'll join the fray. But
Alex is going to have dragon's blood ready to burn in the background.
Well, just remember the whole tinfoil hat thing. What did we used to put on our antenna on our TVs to get a better signal? Tinfoil. You'd make the rabbit ears, right? That's going to amplify the signal, man. You want something lead right on that head.
Lead head. That sounds like a good band.
Ask the Mad Hatter how that
death metal band, Leadhead.
Lead.
Yeah,
there you go.
That would be pretty cool. Well, thank you again, guys.
That's how you get.
This has been awesome, and we'll just say until next time. This is Brothers of the Arcana, and I am Alex Aldea.
I am co-host Dave Ferrigno. Thank you to the Michigan UFO Sightings and Paranormal Encounters podcast for joining us tonight, Wayne and Michelle.
And you guys hang out for a bit, and we'll chat some more after the show. Until next time, guys, have a great one.
All right.